Well, thank you, Lee, and thank you, everybody, for joining us, and welcome to Mayo Clinic. Before we get started, I just want to kind of tell you a little bit that Mayo Clinic is the oldest, most established, most well-known integrated health facility in the world. And we're thrilled to have you here today, and we're thrilled to show you around. I am standing in front of the front door of Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic, well, the city of Rochester welcomes about 2 million people a year to Rochester, and about 80% of those visits are related to Mayo Clinic. Now, you probably hear about all of our patients that come from far and wide, and a lot of patients do, but a great number of our patients come from right here where we are, and it's so interesting to tell them about Mayo Clinic because many of them, even though they've heard of Mayo, don't know the inside story. So let's get started and let's take a tour. You're in the Gandhi Building, and the Gandhi Building is really the heart and the center of the Mayo Clinic campus. The Gandhi Building opened in October of 2001. Excuse me, and all of us remember what happened in September of 2001. So there was a lot of discussion about should the building go ahead and be opened in October, and Mayo Clinic with zeal said yes. Let's continue. It's that important, and it's that important to our mission, because here in the Gandhi Building is where the Mayo Clinic practice all comes together. Not only is it the hub of the campus, it's also the hub of our practice. Remember, I said at the beginning, Mayo Clinic is the oldest and largest integrated group practice. At Mayo Clinic, all specialties come together, and people, physicians, caregivers, all act as a team to care for the patient. Remember, our primary value is the needs of the patients come first, and I think on this tour, you'll really see that in action. The Gandhi family has quite an interesting story, too. Mr. and Mrs. Gandhi have been faithful and were faithful and loyal patients to Mayo Clinic, and through their generosity, they were able to endow this building, which really speaks to their commitment to serving humanity. Let's start over here, Lee. This is the admissions and business services. Now, most people's journey to Mayo Clinic usually starts in this area, but this is also a great place to debuff some of the myths. People will sometimes say you need to have a referral in order to come to Mayo Clinic. That's not true. You can self-refer, you can come, you can make your own appointment, and depending on the specialty, you can get in pretty quickly. People also say, you have to have certain insurance to come to Mayo Clinic. That's not true either. We accept almost all major insurance, and we will work with patients to figure out how their care will be given, how it will be paid for, the estimates of their care, and how their insurance coverage happens. But most importantly at this spot, every single one of our patients is assigned a 7-digit Mayo Clinic number. That Mayo Clinic number doesn't mean you're a number at Mayo Clinic. What it means is that your care is integrated. All of your medical professionals have access to your medical files. So if you're seeing your cardiologist, your orthopedic person can see those records. If you're at dental, the diabetes people can look at that. So it's all an integrated care thing designed by Dr. Henry Plummer himself. The Mayo brothers said that Dr. Plummer, when they hired him, it was one of their best days of their professional life, hiring Henry Plummer, because Henry Plummer was a physician, but more importantly, he was an engineer. And many of our systems and the things that you'll see today were designed by Henry Plummer. Here we are in the Nathan Landau Atrium, truly the heart of the Mayo Clinic campus. And from this view, you can really see a lot of the vista of Mayo Clinic. The older building that you see in the distance is the historic Plummer Building, not only named after Henry Plummer, but designed and built and organized by Dr. Henry Plummer. It's the oldest building still in use on campus. The cornerstone was laid in 1927, and it is still used today for administrative and other sorts of functions. Next to that is the Stabile Building, this more modern building. The Stabile Building is really the center of education and administration here at Mayo Clinic. That building is where a lot of the classrooms, a lot of the meeting rooms, and a lot of the administrative offices. The next building really isn't part of Mayo Clinic, but it's a long-term partner of Mayo Clinic, the historic Kaler Hotel. The Kaler Hotel has always been our neighbor, and the Kaler Hotel at one time served as a hospital. So many of our patients would stay there and doctors would come over and actually see patients. For the past 100 years or so, it's been a hotel, and many people familiar with Mayo Clinic are familiar with the Kaler Hotel. As we come into the atrium, you really see the place that normally during the day there would be a lot of hustle and bustle of activity through this campus. And it wouldn't be a tour of Mayo if you didn't stop at our well-known, and I'll say iconic, piano in the Gandhi lobby. This piano has a story all its own too, and it holds a special place in the hearts of those at social media at Mayo Clinic. So this piano was placed here in preparation for the opening of the Gandhi Building in 2001. The day after the opening, the people didn't come right away to pick up the piano, and a patient just casually sat down and started to play the piano. Then another patient followed, played the piano. Patient after patient. So much so that the donor who had donated the piano said, the piano is becoming part of the Mayo memory, part of the institution. We can't take away the piano. So this beautiful Bosendorfer piano was donated to us by that donor, and it sits here today, and every day it is played. Now the social media part. There was a couple here from Iowa that came and actually sat and played the piano as a duet that you probably have seen on social media. I think that was social media at Mayo Clinic's big break, because that video went global, as we say, and it's all because of this piano. A trip to Mayo Clinic would not be complete without seeing Man in Freedom. Man in Freedom is a sculpture that is so well known. It used to hang on the outside of the Mayo Building. When the Gandhi Building, where we are now, was built, it was taken down, completely restored and refurbished, and then brought in through the roof and rehung in its original location. The idea behind Man in Freedom is this, is your health is your freedom. And that really symbolizes that. Man in Freedom has also become, like the piano, sort of a gathering place for the Mayo family and for our patients. People will say, meet you at the piano or meet you under Man in Freedom. So a trip to Mayo Clinic would not be complete without seeing Man in Freedom. Desk C is where our patients go for their blood draws and other specimen taking, usually prior to their first appointment at Mayo Clinic. So they've been at business services, which you saw, and now the doctor has prescribed, has ordered blood work or other sorts of things. And the idea is this, to have that work done before you have your first appointment. So based upon the description that you've given and the other referrals and things, that they order the tests. So people come here first. When you get here in the morning, these chairs, which are empty today, are filled with patients eagerly awaiting to give their blood. And it's the badge of honor at Mayo Clinic when you walk around with your gauze around your arm because you've been a Mayo Clinic patient and you've given blood. Once you sit in these chairs, you're called to one of these 3 doors by name, and it really runs like clockwork. People are called back in, and actually it goes very, very quickly so that they can give well. As Lee just mentioned, surrounded by beautiful art and architecture, all part of the experience of Mayo Clinic. A lot of people ask the question, why Rochester? Why Mayo Clinic? W.W. Mayo was here in Rochester giving physicals to men in the Civil War going off to fight in battle. And once the war ended, he thought he would move to the next town. But his wife thought otherwise, as a lot of wives do, and she said, nope, we're done moving. So they stayed here in Rochester, but within a few years, a big tornado came and wiped out much of the town. Many people were killed and a lot more people were injured. So Dr. Mayo asked the Sisters of St. Francis, who were right across the street, who were school teachers, to come and help care for the injured. They did that in a dance hall, in an old dance hall, and once the dust had settled and the town was getting back on its feet, the Mother Superior said to Dr. Mayo, "Don't you think it'd be wise to have a hospital?" His response was surprising. It was never. Nobody would ever come to a hospital. People only go to hospitals to die. It won't work in a town this size. But she thought otherwise. She raised the money that he thought she could never do, and within years, the hospital opened. But in the end, it turned out pretty well because it was the birth of Mayo Clinic and the birth of the surgical careers of his sons, Dr. Will and Dr. Charlie. So now we're going to head back into the labs, and we'll head right over this way. So all those blood samples that are taken out in the outer area are then brought back here. And once they're brought here, they're separated, categorized, they're tested, and they're sent off to the various labs within Mayo Clinic depending on the testing that's required. This lab is for the specimens that are taken out at Desk C. But what a lot of people don't realize is that Mayo Clinic in Rochester operates the largest reference laboratory in the United States. About 30,000 samples a day come into Rochester just to be tested here for specialized testing. Some of it is second opinion testing. Some of it is we know it's cancer, but we want to figure out how to treat it and what it is. Or it's other hospitals testing their own systems to make sure that they're reconfirming their diagnosis. But the lab that you're in here, these are for people that are here as patients that come in. And we're in the evening now, but during the day, especially the early parts of the day, this is a hubbub of activity. The things that they're using over here, the pneumatic tubes and the other systems to send specimens throughout the clinic into the hospital, were again all designed by Dr. Henry Plummer originally, that it was his vision of how a lab should be set up. Half doctor, half engineer. And so these lab people are actually working to process the end of the day samples that have been taken here at Mayo Clinic. Oftentimes at this point on the tour, I ask people, have you ever been to Mayo Clinic? And one person said to me, no, I never have, but my tumor was. And I say, oh my gosh, because their specimen was sent here to be tested. So this is the Plummer lobby, one of the original lobbies of Mayo Clinic. The chairs that you see along here, these leather chairs, are original to the room. And patients would wait here for their appointment or wait for their horse and buggy to come and get them. This window is where patients would actually go and pay their bill right here. And if you look at the detail work of this building, which is on the historic register, you really see the juxtaposition of the modern of Mayo Clinic and then the historic nature of this building. You see the inlay, again, another compass, another part of the whole idea of Mayo Clinic. This is the original front desk of Mayo Clinic, where people would come and actually check in, just like we saw business services today in the Gandhi Building. These Plummer doors are always left open to symbolize that Mayo Clinic is always open. They're only closed ceremoniously on very sad and very somber occasions. The death of the Mayo brothers, the death of Franklin Roosevelt, their friend, the assassination of President Kennedy, September 11th, and most recently they were closed when two colleagues were killed while transporting an organ for transplantation in Florida. So these doors are always left open to symbolize that. And many, many pictures have been taken here of people visiting Mayo Clinic. The reliefs that you see on the bronze door all represent different aspects of medicine. And I don't have the guide with me now, but each emblem represents a different aspect and discipline of medicine. You have to come to Mayo and touch the Plummer doors. Mayo Clinic in Rochester operates 2 hospitals that are really operated as one, but began as 2 separate hospitals. One of them is Rochester Methodist Hospital, the Rochester Methodist Campus Hospital. That hospital is a 700-bed hospital. It is the hospital that is used for a lot of procedures that have high infection sort of rates, transplant, orthopedic surgery, babies are born, a lot of cancer surgeries and things are done at that hospital, at that campus. Again, 1 hospital, 2 campuses, the Methodist campus and then St. Mary's campus. At this end, at the south end of the campus, you see the tall building is the Guggenheim Building. The Guggenheim Building is filled with research labs. That is where a lot of the research that Mayo Clinic is known for happens. The shorter building is the Hilton Building, and that's where we saw Desk C. So that's blood, pathology, those sorts of things in the Hilton Building. Farther down the street, you see the Stabile Building, and the Stabile Building is anatomy, classrooms, those sorts of things in the Stabile. Notice the power plant. 2 power plants downtown, Mayo generating its own power right here on the campus. This oasis is the Boy and the Dolphin Park. The Mayo Clinic Children's Garden surrounds it. And this sculpture really talks to freedom, talks to intelligence with the dolphin, playfulness, and it's one of the most iconic places that people just love to visit, the Boy and the Dolphin. The building in front of us is the Mayo Building. The Mayo Building is directly attached to the Gandhi Building. The Mayo Building is the place where a lot of clinical offices are, clinical appointments are, medical specialties are in the Mayo Building. A woman who lived here in Rochester called us up one day. I think she just called the switchboard and she said, I have something in my old barn that you all might be interested in. And so they said, well, I don't know. So people came out and looked at it, and there was one of the very first ambulances ever used by Mayo Clinic. Horse-drawn carriage ambulance right here in our lobby. Really a fun addition. People love to see. And here is the Dale Chihuly sculpture that is prized by Mayo Clinic. And this sculpture is in an atrium dedicated to nursing at Mayo Clinic. Dedicated to nursing. And this sculpture is so interesting because each of these pieces of glass was hand blown by Dale Chihuly in his studio and assembled here on site. So this sculpture, I was here the night they put it together because we were filming it, and this sculpture took shape right here. There's no one like it in the world because they assembled it right there. So now people say, how do you clean this Chihuly sculpture? Very, very carefully. Each piece is wiped down and taken apart and actually put back into place for the sculpture. The Mayo Clinic logo has 3 shields. The shield in the middle stands for practice. The other 2 shields stand for education and research. As you go about the Mayo Clinic campus, you will always see an education center, like the Cancer Education Center here, and then right around the corner, the Mayo Clinic Research Information Center. pretty much on every single floor, because the Mayo brothers believed, and we continue today to believe, that our patients will do better, not only if they're diagnosed with a condition, but if they understand that condition or that of their family member, and if they're involved in the latest and greatest research. Thank you for coming on this tour of Mayo Clinic. It was my pleasure to show you around, and I hope to see you in the near future. Good health and much wellness to you all.